you to Congressman Gohmert and to his office, Jonna. Every time Grassroots America reaches out to ask Louie a question, to find out more information about an issue, his staff are always a delight to work with. They're very professional. If they say they're going to get back with you, they will. And he has never, there's a big controversy erupting around Texas over who will and won't have a town hall meeting. And not everybody has a congressman that will have a town hall meeting. And they're kind of getting in trouble. Well, yesterday, I got a phone call from Boston Globe and from National Review, and they asked me questions about how is it that your congressman does town hall meetings, and is it true that you've been trying to get Senator Cornyn to have a town hall meeting and he won't, and is that, you know, are you having the same experience that other groups are having across the state? So we talked about that a little bit, and I said, you know, we're asking Senator Cornyn's office to agree to have a town hall meeting with us. And so I said, I'm not going to tell you that he won't because we're still talking about it. Well, I will tell you something, and I get to call him Louie because we've been friends and he gave me permission. Louie, I got the most hate mail because today I had people saying, and so you're a friend of Louie Gohmert, and you would actually say you agree with him? So you know what I did, Congressman Gohmert? Gohmert, delete, delete, delete. Don't even respond to those people. Anyway, you know, some of those people on the left who don't like Christians, you know, you get the drill. You hear from them too. Anyway, Congressman Gohmert is going to come up here now, and he's going to have a conversation with you. He's going to talk. He's going to hit the high points on some of the big issues of the day, and we all know what they are. And then what I need you to do is to start writing a question on a card. The purpose of this is to have as many questions asked as possible. Sharon Guthrie is going to help me go through the cards, and she's going to put them in stacks of like, how many questions on Obamacare and how many on Benghazi, how many on the unconstitutional acts of the president, you know, questions like that. And so we're going to go through those questions, and we're going to ask Congressman Gohmert the questions. And so there will be a time or two that I will say to the congressman, and this is the lightning round. And he knows what that means. So anyway, come on up here, Congressman. Thank you so much.
So many of you have known for so long. There's nothing new or special here. It just, a lot of y'all know, I think like you do, and I hope that doesn't scare some other folks here. But anyway, just trying to bring the common sense that we find in East Texas to Washington. I was in Longview speaking to a group at noon. We got a couple folks come in that were there. I couldn't believe they'd come back again. Good grief. But anyway, Longview has a special place in my heart. Growing up in Mount Pleasant, it was third grade when I had a third grade teacher tell my mother that, my mother and dad, I don't think Louie's hearing anything. And I was making A, B's, and C's. And anyway, we went to an ear doctor in Longview, Dr. Norman, and he said, I can't believe he's hearing anything. His eardrum's not moving. So they went to work on me, and once we got the problem fixed up, I started making straight A's from then on. So I always think about Dr. Norman and Longview and being able to hear. But heard about a fellow that went to the ear doctor. For years, he hadn't been able to hear squat, and ear doctor got him fitted with 2 hearing aids that actually took care of his problem. And so he told him, come back in a month and we make sure everything's fine. Comes back in a month and he said, so what did your family think about after all these years, you finally hearing so well now? And he said, oh, I hadn't told them. So you hadn't told him? He said, no, I just sit and listen. But I have changed my will 5 times. So, anyway, my late mother she was an 8th grade English teacher, and she used to say, Louie, one of the things that's likable about you, you're teachable. And I try to remain that way. And though there are a lot of different positions on all of the important issues, I'm open to what people have got to say. And as Joanne and I've talked about this we've talked about this a number of times, but people are constantly telling me, wow, you've just got more confidence in your constituents than I do. They'll never understand why I voted this way. You know, maybe there's a poison pill in a bill that otherwise has a good name. How could you vote against a bill that has a good name? And the Democrats figured that out. They put all these great names. Affordable Care Act? Are you against affordable care, really? But I've explained numerous times, look, I believe a majority of the people in my district agree with me, and if they don't, I believe a majority will give me a chance to explain, and when I do, they will agree with me. And you have no idea how much freedom comes from that, you know, just knowing. People will give me a chance to explain. You know, there are those that will try to shout you down, and they're just going to be that way, and they're not going to listen to truth until it hits them in the head, but not liberally, okay? Because everything I say, I really, sometimes I get so down, you know, I'm just going, gosh, you know, is there any use, you know, what are we doing here? And then I'll see about 10 different left-wing blogs that are just trashing me every which way, and I'll think, well, they think I'm making enough difference, they're coming after me. I guess I'm doing okay. You know, if they're spending that kind of time monitoring every word I say, and they are. And so when I was doing the Hannity show on Monday, I was shocked. Last Thursday, they asked if I would do that, and I had told Cindy Schwartz over in Longview that I would speak to their group that night, and I was very serious. I called Cindy and I said, Cindy, I've been asked to host Sean Hannity's radio show Monday, but if I did that, it would mean I couldn't be there Monday night. And I promised you first, and I will not, you know, break a commitment unless I had your permission. And if you say, no, we promised too many people, she said, are you kidding? Everybody will understand. You go ahead and go. But I wouldn't have gone if she hadn't given me permission, because I made a commitment first to her. So it worked out, and it was a lot of fun. And I'm doing the show, and the producer and assistant producer threw the glass in there, and we took a break at the bottom of the hour, and I said, so how am I doing? They said, well, the left-wing blogs they're already tearing you up. You're doing great. You know, they said usually it takes Sean an hour before they start writing what he said. They're already all over you. And I went, oh, okay, so I guess we're making progress. But that was a real honor. And then Tuesday, Sean had said, I really want you to, so I did the TV show. And he was telling me afterwards, he said, man, that went so well. I'm looking for chances to take off so you can come fill in for me. And so it just made me. But y'all, it really was fun. And I'm sure that there will be people that ask, oh, so you think you're a radio show guy instead of a congressman? Look, the way I see it, and I'm open to people correcting me if I'm wrong, but the way I see it, part of the job of being a congressman, yes, it's to hear, it's to listen, but it's also to study the bills we're doing. It's also to participate in hearings and learn what you can, and then to educate people from what you've learned. I really think that that's a big help, so that's why I agreed to go on shows so long as I feel like they're fair. But when somebody hadn't treated me fairly, I won't do the show until, as I keep telling CNN again, when Andy Cooper, isn't that his name, Andy Cooper, something like that? Yeah, Andy Cooper. But anyway, they wanted me on the show this week, and I said, I've never seen anything you've ever done that mentioned me that was fair. Once I see one article, anything that you've done that was fair, sure, I'll come on. But this Sunday morning, I'm supposed to, and I love preaching, I love preaching churches around East Texas, and it's quite an honor. And so I'm usually in church, but George Stephanopoulos wanted me on his show. They've asked me a number of times. And, you know, folks, I don't forget. Who was it that first brought up the issue of birth control that would launch that whole escapade during the campaign? But on Sunday mornings, he seems to be fair, and George Will is going to be there Sunday morning. So I'd agree to be on. We'll see how that goes. If I'm not treated fairly, then I don't do it again. But I figure people deserve one chance, and we'll see. On the issue of immigration, let me just tell you, and I told Joanne, I mainly wanted your questions, so I'd touch on what you want, because there's just so much going on that's really important. Oh, and before I forget, I got a birthday barbecue coming up August 22nd, and a dear here at Harvey Hall, and a dear friend named Alan Keyes is going to be there too. And I think the world of Alan, and full disclosure, his son works for me too, so that's a good thing. But Andrew's just a sharp guy, and it's an honor to have him working with us. So a lot going on, but on immigration, when we heard 2 or 3 months ago our leadership say, yeah, we're going to try to have an immigration bill passed by August 1st, then there were like 10 or 12 of us that started meeting weekly to try to strategize on what we could do. Because, and I'm sure you've heard me say it, I believe it with all my heart because I just know it's true. Until you control the border, not close it. We don't want, you know, just the stagnant pond here. We want fresh water coming in. But until you control who comes in, there's no use having one of these bills because you're going to have to do it all over again. And I get it. Our party behind closed doors, we're told over and over, and they don't use this word, but I'll use it. If you just pander to the Hispanics, we can start getting their votes. And I'm sorry, I happen to have more regard for the Hispanic people than that. They see through that. They're not stupid. The people out there are hardworking. In fact, and I've explained it, and this is what I believe. I believe that one of the best things we had going for America through all these years, through the good times and bad times, most Americans love God, they were devoted to their family, and they had a hard work ethic. And man, those really gave us a better backbone of America than anything else we could ask for. And we've fallen a long way from that. And I know President Obama says we're not a Christian nation. And frankly, that's something I'm not going to debate because I'm not sure we are anymore. But I know we used to be, and I know we were founded as a Christian nation where atheists or anybody else could worship, but we're founded on Christian principles. And I mean, so I welcome Hispanics. I know my critics love to use the word xenophobe. I'm scared of foreigners. Follow me around sometime. You know, I'm not afraid of anybody. And people in different parts of the world hug my neck, you know, moderate Muslims in Afghanistan and all over, you know. I'm not afraid of anybody. I'm afraid of God, and that's nobody else. And so, anyway, that's not appropriately applied. But there may be 1.5 billion people that would like to come to this country either permanently or for a visit. So unless we control who comes in and make sure they're not going to hurt our way of life, then we're not going to continue to have a country people want to come into. And it is too important. So and the border can be secured. You do a little checking on history. When Woodrow Wilson was president, of all people, Woodrow Wilson, We had Pancho Villa and some folks come across the border and killed American families. Wasn't much done when they came across and robbed, but when they came across and killed a number of families, that was it. Woodrow Wilson had the border secured where nobody came in unless we wanted them to. And you can read different accounts. I've read, you know, all kinds of thousands, tens of thousands of soldiers. One account said 153,000 soldiers, and I don't think it could have been that high, but it might have been. But he secured the border, and he didn't have the technology we do, and it was secured. And of course, he also sent General Pershing into Mexico chasing Pancho Villa. Never got him, but he killed enough of his lieutenants. We never had a problem from him again. But that's how you deal with people that attack you. You don't run the other direction and say, oh, we better run for cover. Maybe that was the appropriate thing in the 1790s when we didn't have a standing military. We didn't have Marines. We didn't have a Navy. We didn't have anything to fight for. Fight with, rather. We had plenty to fight for, but not with. And that's why in the early 1800s, a guy named Thomas Jefferson finally realized, you know, gee, maybe if we sent these new things we created called Marines to the shores of Tripoli, and they can fight tough enough, these people will leave us alone. And that's what happened. So here we are, refusing to learn the lessons of history. And there are people, I was just roundly vilified for saying that there are radical Islamists that have come into our country trying to pass themselves off as Hispanic. I mean, Hispanic comedians, all kinds of folks were making fun of me. And of course the left wing goes nuts over that. And they didn't bother to just even do the least bit of research, because they would have found their hero, certainly not mine, the director of the FBI, had testified and confirmed, yes, we know there are people, radical Islamists, that have taken on Hispanic sounding names, come to Mexico, get an ID, and then some of them even learn some Spanish language so they can try to, you know, blend in so we don't notice, whoa, these maybe people want to kill us, because we're not worried about Hispanics coming across. So it was not a slander at all. It was just based on facts. But we come back to this. Until we can control who comes in, it makes no sense to pass some kind of bill. So as we strategized weekly, our goal became, I guess it hurts to tell you about our strategy now. Our strategy was, if we can just keep fighting and keep pushing, and if we can just delay the vote on some kind of comprehensive immigration bill. Comprehensive, for those of you who are not familiar with Congress, comprehensive means there's a whole bunch of bad laws we want to get passed, and the only way we can do it is we have a really big bill that we can hide them in. That's what comprehensive means. And so anyway, we thought if we can just put this off and avoid having a bill passed before August 1st, then thank God for August. Now, I know there are people that, you guys ought to be working. I'm telling you, we ought to have more months like August where we have to come home and meet with our constituents. It's not a lot, but the last couple of nights she's just been railing about this vacation, you know, and for some it is, you know, if you like Martha's Vineyard, but and frankly, when I come home every weekend, I feel like even though I'm running all over our 12 counties, I love it, and one of the proudest things for me, you know, one of the hits some of y'all may remember when I ran for Congress, nobody from Tyler is going to care anything about anybody else in our district. You're only going to care about Tyler. And I told them then, I was serious, I'm going to represent the whole district. So I take great pride in the fact that people in Hemphill, Center, different places around, they've said, he's been to our district, our town more than anybody else we've ever had represent us, because that's the job. And I love doing that. So it's a vacation if you choose to make it that, but it's a great time. And so the strategy so far we were able to avoid having a vote. First it was we were going to pass a comprehensive bill by August 1st, and then it was, well, we're at least going to pass a DREAM Act by August 1st. And so we just felt like, among about a dozen of us, if we can get to August 1st and not have passed an immigration bill, then people will have to face the American public during August, and then we've got a shot at avoiding it, and through the fall. Yes, we need immigration reform. There's a lot of things we can do. I've got proposals, I've got bills. There are a lot of things we can do, but it makes no sense to do them until the border's secured. And so I was hoping that I would get one of our more mainstream guys to, and by that I mean one of the guys that's in good favor with the Speaker, to agree to be the first name on my resolution. And the resolution has a bunch of whereases that just sets out facts and then says, in essence, therefore be resolved that the Congress will not, that until our border is secured as verified by the border states, we are not going to take up an immigration bill in the House, and then move on. And I wasn't going to get my zero baseline bill passed until, and I knew this, and I told the Speaker and Paul, I'm fine, put anybody else's name on there, we just got to do it. And they did, and there's a sharp freshman last time that did it, and we're doing it again. But now we got to get the Senate to do it. Same thing on this. I hope we'd have somebody in favor with the Speaker, but by last Friday we didn't have. There's a number of people that have signed on, but they're troublemakers like me. So anyway, but I wanted it on file before the August break so that we could say, look, we've got this, and this is what we need to pass. So I would encourage you, let senators know, let everybody know their position should be, until the border's secure, we should not pass an immigration bill. You secure that, we'll get something worked out like that. But that's not what they want to do. And even if it's just a DREAM Act, and I want to give you this ammunition when people ask, well, so what? So you hate students? No, I love students. That's not the issue. We've already been told. Well, now, of course, there's some that aren't young people anymore. There are older people. They came in, their parents brought them in illegally, but they've never known another country. This is all they've ever, it's only fair to give them legal status and allow them to come in out of the shadows. They were in the Senate gallery. How is that shadows? It didn't look like shadows to me, but anyway, and I brought this up in conference last week. Okay, let's talk about the DREAM Act. Where are you going to draw the line? You've already said there's people that are not children anymore, so where do you draw the line? 25, 35, 45, 55? I mean, where do you arbitrarily draw that line? There's not a good place. And then how do you determine who was here by the deadline and who was brought over by their parents? And we already told under prior laws, well, what they were going to do is, if you're willing to sign a sworn affidavit saying you were here by the deadline, and then others have said, oh, well, we may require proof, like if you have an electric bill that shows. And I've asked before, so are you going to follow up and make sure it's a legitimate electric bill? Well, we don't have time to do that. Anybody have a printer at home that could print an electric bill for you if you make one up? I mean, it's going to open the door, and of course, anybody, once they have legal status, then that allows them to help other people get legal status. So you can call it a DREAM Act, but it's going to basically give legal status to everybody. And as far as prejudice against Hispanics, are you kidding? Are you kidding? No way. I think they're great for America, those that have the core values of Americans. But it's a 60+% popular issue among Hispanic adults saying, yeah, sure, secure the border first. And when you have people tell you, oh, but we put the securing first in the bill, Have you not noticed that the president just waves things in bills he doesn't care about? I mean, how many times do we have to see that? He did it again this week, and this was a statement, this is an AP story. Homeland Security Department tentatively approved asylum requests for 7 Mexican immigrants, including some who were living in the United States illegally, but left and then attempted to re-enter as part of a protest against U.S. deportation policies. The AP's Alicia Caldwell reported Tuesday, quote, "The preliminary approval is highly unusual because it is rare for the U.S. government to grant asylum to Mexican citizens." So now we have to grant asylum to Mexican citizens because they're coming in to protest United States law? I mean, what are we doing? You think this administration that will do that is going to honor the demand for securing the border first in a bill? We've seen that game. It was 1986. So anyway, it's just time on immigration. You secure the border, and then we'll come back to it. And frankly, I get tired of people whose whole goal is politics, because I really believe you do the right things, the politics are good for doing the right thing. You just got to communicate it. People understand that, and they get pandering. So I was so thrilled a few months ago when I saw that over 60% of Americans want something done about the IRS, would like it to go away, want huge reform. And over 60% want answers to what happened in Benghazi. Over 60% are very concerned about their U.S. government spying on them, going, this is great. We've got the American people on our side, giving with us and standing with us. And then the Republican leadership said, all right, push all that aside. Let's take up immigration now. Are you kidding me? We just have them on our side to do massive reform to the Internal Revenue Code. And what I hope what that reform is, throw the whole thing out. And let's have a short little thing. I called Steve Forbes last fall because the president was beating us over the head with everybody should pay fair share, fair share, fair share. And when you ask people what's a fair share, well, I don't know, but if you make more money, you ought to pay more. Well, you ask them, well, how about if we just had a flat rate? So if you make more money, you pay more money. You make less money, you pay it. Yeah, that sounds fair. People like that idea because they didn't realize how unfair it is. And Arthur Laffer has become a friend. In fact, he texted me after I did a Hannity show. But anyway, he says, Lou, you're a big idea guy. We need big idea guys, but I don't want you to be discouraged because every big idea has never, ever been accepted when it's first mentioned. All right. So one of those big ideas, and it's not original, a flat tax. You know, just a flat tax. Now, my concern there was, how do you do a flat tax and still get rid of the IRS, which I want to do? And Arthur says, I've got the answer to that. I've got it all worked out how you go to a flat tax, and you don't need the IRS. He said, our problem is you have an agency who gets to pick who they're going after. You can't do that. You've got an agency that once they go after somebody they chose to go after, they can take their home, they can take their living, they can just destroy their lives. You can't have that. He said, and I said, but you've got to have somebody making sure people are paying their flat tax and not cheating. And he said, this is how you do it. You have an agency that is a tiny fraction the size of the IRS with no enforcement power, who is an auditing agency. And they never, ever get to pick who they're going to go audit. It's completely random, and you have an inspector general, you know, making sure it is completely random. And if they find somebody is cheating, then they have to give it over to the Justice Department. They're not allowed to be, you know, judge, jury, and executioner, which they can be right now. And anyway, he said, I've got the whole thing mapped out, and I would love to come present 1, 2, 3s on it for some of the guys that are really ready to do something. And so I talked to Dave Camp, that's chairman of Ways and Means, over taxes. And I told him during one of the votes, Arthur Laffer tells me he'd like for us to get a group of people that are all involved in tax, and you're the top, Dave, to talk about how the nuts and bolts of how we could move to a flat tax. He said, I'd love to do that. Paul Ryan's on board. So anyway, I'm trying to put together a meeting where we can talk about that and Arthur lay those things out. Last fall, I called Steve Forbes and I said, nobody in our party leadership can respond adequately to fair share. You do with 2 words, flat tax. Will you come help me do a press conference? He said, absolutely. And I called Laffer and he agreed. And anyway, there's people ready to help make it happen. All we have to do is just stand up and do it. And to me, it's not pandering. It's just the right thing to do, and people will love that. Scott Walker found that out. But I could go on and on for so many things, but let me start taking questions.
And Sharon, hand me the questions. We're going to take the toughest ones first.
All right.
We're going to take the ones that look like people that don't agree with you, Louie, because you know what? We're not
Be accused here of giving you softball questions. So, what I want are the NDAA and all the NSA spying questions. I want all that.
Okay.
And then right after that, I want fair tax versus flat tax.
Why don't you do those?
I'll do the, okay, here's what we're going to do first. We're going to do the fair tax questions.
All right.
You have indicated you are for a 15% flat tax, yet you have not proposed a flat tax bill. Why don't you co-sponsor H.R. 25, the fair tax, as 15 of your 15 Texas reps, your colleagues have done?
Okay. Good question, and I know there are probably a lot of people here that prefer the fair tax over the flat tax. It's just my observation and experience historically, and not just in this country, but when you create a new tax and before you ever start collecting that tax, you've gotten rid of the old one, chances are it's not going to go away. And I know the argument is, look, it's part of the bill that there has to be a complete repeal of the income tax amendment within 5 years, or we go back to the income tax. I just don't think that's going to ever happen. That first, I don't believe it would be repealed, and second, if it's not, I don't believe that you're going to get rid of a sales tax once it's there. You'll have a national sales tax. Also, since we're in a state that has no income tax and we pay like 8 1/4 here, I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I don't think so. But we're talking about a 23 to 31% tax among people that I trust. And if you're talking about a 31 to 41% total sales tax when you go to the register, yes, I get it. Yes, I understand. We will have gotten rid of every single other federal tax there is. I get that. But just thinking about a 30 to 40% tax every time I go to the register, it's tough. And I also, having discussed this enough among other members of Congress, I think the flat tax is a whole lot easier to sell. And I love John Linder and Neil Bortz, and I'm fans of both of theirs. And I've had lengthy discussions with John about the fair tax. And I wish he were still in Congress. He was a good man, and is a good man, a brilliant man. But I just think the flat tax would be an easier sell. I know people say, well, if you have a fair tax, that's what allows you to get rid of the IRS. But even then, I mean, we've got sales taxes that people don't pay now. You're still going to have some kind of investigation and enforcement. And unfortunately, I think it could be done like Laffer's talking about if we had a flat tax. I think it's just too far, a hill too far, too much of an uphill climb. And having talked to enough other members of Congress, I think we could sell a flat tax, and they're just a lot of folks that will never bring on board with a 30 to 40% sales tax. So I know there's room for disagreement, but the thing is, the people that believe in the fair tax on just about every other thing I know of, we agree on everything else. I just think we got a shot at a flat tax if we'll push it hard, and we're talking years before we would be able to educate America enough to have a shot at the fair tax. And I just don't think we're going to get that repealed, and when it's not repealed, I don't think the sales tax goes away.
Okay, here's another one. Why have you not signed on as co-sponsor of H.R. 24, the Federal Reserve Transparency Act?
Well, I thought I was in the last Congress, so if I'm not, that was something I agreed with Ron Paul 100%. Now, frankly, I do have mixed emotions. On the one hand, yes, I want transparency, so thanks for bringing that up. Thank you. There's so many bills I've signed on to, but we have a new Congress every 2 years. I will, because I totally support transparency on the one hand, but on the other hand, I would really be just as happy if we did away with the Federal Reserve. So, thank you. And that's the kind of thing I need. You know, if you know of an issue, I mean, I don't hear about every bill. You know, there are thousands of bills that get filed, and if you, but because you know me, if you, hey, why have you signed on to this? Well, it may be because it slipped by me. So thank you. We'll take care of that. Well, John, if you make me a note of things I need to do. So thank you. That's good help already tonight.
Here's one on the NDAA. Why did you vote for the NDAA, and why did you not? And why did you vote against H.R. 1127, which is the repeal indefinite detention portion of the NDAA? Okay,
as far as the NDAA, just so you understand, the NDAA is a reauthorization of the original authorization of use of military force from 2001. So the NDAA in and of itself is not a law, it is a reauthorization of the original AUMF, authorization of use of military force, 2001. And it was passed immediately after 9/11, when we didn't know who had done what. We had no clue. And so we were struggling. And so they rapidly threw a bill together, and the provision that gave the president power was just ubiquitous. Basically, anybody he wanted to lock up, any time for how long he wanted to lock them up, he had authority to do that. He had authority to go after them militarily. It was just staggering when you read the power he had. And so the concern was there, wait a minute, what about American citizens? What about due process? Because it was not supposed to allow him to do these things to American citizens. So the problem is not with necessarily the NDAA that just reauthorizes the use of military force, and it had to pass in order not to just cut off people that are still in Afghanistan the way we did in Vietnam. And if I would rather have us been out of Afghanistan right after the Taliban were defeated and never become an occupying force. That historically is the way to do it, and we did it, and the Taliban were defeated by early 2002 without a loss of a single American life because we had less than 500 people in there. And that was all authorized, though, under the AUMF. But I've had people fuss at me, yell at me. They don't understand, and please read it carefully and you'll understand. But the really offensive power given the president is in that first part of the AUMF. Basically, go after anybody if he thinks that they're a threat. And so I didn't want to have funds cut off. So how do you go about making sure that Americans are protected? And it was the Gohmert Amendment that I was able to get through, and it was mine. And there was a lot of negotiation involved, but I wanted to make sure we completely reined in the president's power under the original AUMF, and so that he could not go after an American citizen other than through the normal criminal justice process unless they were in a foreign country. And so the negotiation basically ended up that the Gohmert Amendment was this. At first, I thought it would help people's feelings better to say you have to have a writ of habeas corpus hearing within 30 days. And then a lot of folks that were misunderstanding what we were doing were saying, oh, so you're going to let them hold people 30 days? Well, we don't want a date in there. Well, okay. That's one of those things I'm willing to negotiate. My concern is that you cannot lock up an American citizen unless there is probable cause to believe they committed a crime and that a probable cause to believe a crime was committed. So we worked that into the amendment. The only thing that is not protected now are people that are illegally in the country. And that was a demand that the ACLU and CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, were demanding. They said they want the same guarantees for everybody, including people illegally in the country. And my position was, look, I've been in the military. The military is not entitled to what you're saying people illegally in the country trying to do us harm should be entitled. And I'm not willing to go that far. So CARE and the ACLU came after the Gohmert Amendment and said, I'm willing to have people locked up. And they scared a lot of people, and I even had somebody out at Wood County call me a traitor for pushing my amendment. And I'm telling you, if you get beyond the ACLU and CARE rhetoric, and you look at what my amendment did to the AUMF, and it is part of the NDAA, you look at what it did. If you're an American citizen, and this was my compromise, I compromised, okay, we'll add the same protection for people who are in the country legally. Because originally I didn't have that. If you were, because my thought was, if you're a 9/11 bomber and you were here lawfully on a visa at the time, I still think you ought to be treated like an enemy combatant and taken to Guantanamo Bay. But my compromise with those who said that's not fair, okay, I compromised, we added language, so if you're an American citizen or you're legally in this country, then you are protected. The president can't just lock you up without going through the normal due process requirements of the Constitution. And if you're legally here, same thing. The only people that are not protected in this country are people that are here illegally. And I kept trying to argue, well, if somebody's come into this country illegally, we can deport them and not give them any due process. That's constitutional. So why are you demanding an Article III court? And by the way, for those of you that say everybody in America should have an Article III court that you're entitled to go before, the military didn't get that. They have the UCMJ because Congress created it, because the Constitution said we can do that. And also, there is no such thing as an Article III court that was created under the Constitution other than the Supreme Court. As my constitutional law professor used to say, there's only one court created in the Constitution, that's the Supreme Court. All the others are creations of Congress. So if we wanted to set up a whole different judicial system for terrorists, we could do that. We're authorized. If we wanted to set up a different adjudication system for people illegally in the country, not only can we do it, but that's been there for years. We have the courts for people that are illegally here, and they go before, and then they're deported, supposedly. Then they come right back. So anyway, that's I voted for the NDAA. It reauthorized the use of force. I really think we made a terrible mistake after we won in Afghanistan and putting tens of thousands of troops there and becoming occupiers. And I want, and this was a request by the Northern Alliance that originally defeated the Taliban for us. Last time I was in Afghanistan, the ambassador and the military said, you can't leave this compound. And I finally said, I've already talked to Masood. General Dustin, this group is waiting at his residence. It's a secure residence. And I am going. He said, sir, we're not going to let you go. And I said, Colonel, you see that gate right out here? You're going to have to take me down between where we're standing and that gate because Masood's sending a car and I'm getting in it and I'm going to meet with our allies that we've thrown under the bus. And he said, sir, we're not authorized to take down a member of Congress. And I said, fine, then you're not stopping me. And so anyway, so what they have asked, and if you haven't looked at what we did to them, the Constitution, it was a product of what we did to them. It's Sharia law. The last public Christian church has now had to go underground because of the Constitution. But we gave them a stovepipe government where the president appoints the governors. The president appoints the mayors and the chiefs of police. He appoints most of the higher level teachers. He appoints a big swath of the legislature. We gave them that Constitution. And so all they've asked is, look, would you leave enough forces here to keep the Taliban from taking over until you force us to change our Constitution to do this thing? Let us elect our governors. Let us elect our mayors like you do. Let's pick our own chiefs of police. And we will be able to be strong enough regionally. We can keep the Taliban from taking over. They may get one region, one little state area, but we can keep them out of the rest of it. The way you've got it, all they got to do is either corrupt Karzai or knock him off and they take over. But if you'll allow us to elect our leaders in our states and local communities, then we'll be able to be strong enough regionally, we can hold them off. And so that's all we're asking. And so I hate to turn tail and run from Afghanistan when we shouldn't have stayed there so long. We wouldn't have to be there today if we had encouraged them to have a constitution where they elect their leaders like we do. We didn't do that to them. We did some severe damage to them. And I said to Masood, whose brother was called the Lion of Pashtun, he was the greatest national hero fighting the Russians. He was the one man that could have, by himself, with a little support from us, he could have retaken Afghanistan after 9/11, and the Taliban knew that. So about 36 hours before 9/11, the plane crashes, the Taliban got Masood, the Lion of Pashtun, to agree to an interview. They sent a cameraman and a known reporter in. They checked them thoroughly, but the camera was full of explosives. So when the interview started, they detonated it and killed Masood right before 9/11 because they knew we might figure out where they came from. He'd be the first guy we'd come to get him to take over because he was not a corruptible figure as easily as Karzai has been. So I would like to at least keep people there until we do that. I said, what makes you think we could get you to change your constitution? He said, you know what the Afghan budget for our government is? No. Does anybody here know? I mean, I didn't know. He said, in your dollars, roughly $12.5 billion. And he said, you know how much of that we come up with from our own revenue within Afghanistan? No. About $1.5 billion. The other $11 billion comes from other countries, mainly the United States. He said, you've got all the leverage you need to get us to change our Constitution. And we're going to apparently keep paying under this administration, under President Obama, even after the soldiers are gone. Well, we should have done that years ago, forced them to have that in their Constitution. And we shouldn't be occupying, we shouldn't be nation building. But I don't want to just pull them out and immediately give to the Taliban. I had to vote for the NDAA to avoid that happening. But I wanted to make sure American citizens were protected. And if you want the language, I don't have it with me tonight. If you'll let my office know, I'll get you the language so you understand you're protected. The only people that aren't are people illegally in the country. So,
okay.
Thanks.
You voted to extend the Patriot Act, which destroys the Constitution and includes warrantless wiretapping of American citizens. What bothers you about the new NSA spying revelations now, seeing that you voted for these policies?
Okay, thank you. And let me just say, I know it sounds like an adversarial question, but I heard a lawyer one time saying, when it comes to jury selection, sometimes you may get a tough question or answer for somebody that's a potential juror. And he said, most lawyers get all upset. You know, why? How dare you controvert my position? And he said, what you ought to do is jump over the rail and shake their hands because you have an honest juror, because they're willing to tell you when they disagree with you. And that's the way I feel. I appreciate that. And when it comes to the Patriot Act, of course, I wasn't there when it was first passed. So, but it came up my freshman term. We're in the majority. And Chairman Sensenbrenner made clear we were going to renew it. And even though he had written sunsets into it back in 2001, he was not going to allow any sunsets in the Patriot Act extension. And I read it. And I had some concerns about language in there, but there was no way I could vote for one unless it was sunsets, because even under the Bush administration Justice Department, we couldn't get answers from their Justice Department. They did like this one. They wouldn't give answers, and the only way we got answers as to how the Patriot Act was being used was 30 days before it came up for a sunset. All of a sudden, they got very cooperative. So we were, and I wanted some fixes to the language in Section 215. Had some concerns about 206, but 215, it says in there there has to be a tie with either a known foreign terrorist or a member of a known or association with a known terrorist organization that is foreign. That's the tie. And it does say that. And so we fought about some of the provisions. I didn't think they were adequate. There was adequate protection because on the one hand, they could demand people produce information, and the original Patriot Act said, and it's a crime if they tell anyone about the demand for records. So we got that modified. I said, under this, you can't even talk to a lawyer. And Attorney General Gonzalez said, oh no, but we've always interpreted that. I said, well, it doesn't say that. It needs to say that. So we got a number of things fixed, but I still didn't trust that it would be adequately done since we'd gotten the runaround from the Gonzalez Justice Department. And so there were a number of us that wanted sunset so we could have that hanging over their head to force proper accountability. And as we got closer to that day where we were going to vote in committee on the bill to extend it, more and more of our guys that wanted sunsets were getting picked off. They were promising them this, that, or the other in return for not requiring sunsets on the Patriot Act. And it got down to the day before, and two people, one is now a senator, one is one of the most affluent guys in the House, and they're both good people. But they cornered me privately, and I mean literally, into a corner, and said, what are you going to do on the sunsets, on the Patriot Act? And I said, well, I don't know where you guys are going to be tomorrow, but I can't vote for it unless there's sunset. They said, all right, you better hold that position. You're going to try everything to get you to change your mind. And I said, I've told you, without accountability, I can't vote for it. And so then I got calls from the Justice Department, stuff like, hey, you know how you didn't think 14 days or 15 days or 30 days was enough time? So we're willing to agree, and we can get everybody to go along with a Gohmert amendment that will add more time for reviewing this, that, or the other. I said, great, great. But now, all right, so, you know, we'll make sure that that passes for you. And I said, well, how do you know? You're over in the Justice. Oh, no, we've talked enough for other members. They'll go along. I said, okay. But now you do understand you got to give up a demand for sunsets. Then we got nothing to talk about. So I was getting more and more, well, how about if we get a Gohmert amendment that does this or that? And I said, as long as you don't make me give up my demands for sunset, okay. And they said, well, no, that's the whole point. And then I got a call from folks at the White House. They were putting pressure on, and I said, I don't care. This could be too easily abused unless we have adequate oversight. And the only way we got leverage is with the sunsets. So then I get a notice from our committee that our normal 15-minute meeting that we have of just the Republicans before the hearing starts, so we make sure where everybody is, and hopefully we're on the same page. It had now been extended to a 30-minute meeting. So I asked some other guys, have we ever had a 30-minute pre-hearing meeting? No, they must be really wanting to browbeat you. So then I get some other calls. Okay, how about if we do this, if you'll give up on the sunsets? I'm not giving up on sunsets, forget it. So then I get another notice that the Speaker and the Majority Leader will both attend our pre-hearing meeting. So I emailed somebody, I said, have they ever attended a pre-hearing meeting? Never. It's going to get ugly tomorrow. So anyway, I went in, and to Dennis Hastert and Tom DeLay's credit, they sat there and didn't say anything for about 20 minutes. And the chairman and I went back and forth, and it kind of elevated to a yelling match. And it was a packed room there in our conference room. And then Tom Feeney, he's not in Congress anymore, he got defeated, but Tom said, you know, Mr. Chairman, and this at this point it's about 25 minutes in the meeting, we're about to start hearing in 5 minutes or so. And just before Tom says this, Hastert and DeLay both stand up, and Speaker Hastert said, look, obviously you guys know this issue a lot better than we do, so we're not even going to get in the middle of this. But he said, what I'm asking, what I'm demanding is you guys work it out in here before you get out there. I don't want to hear this kind of stuff going on between Republicans out there in the hearing. So they leave, and then I make another pitch, and then that's when Tom said, Mr. Chairman, I would really feel more comfortable if we had sunsets in there. And then Chris Cannon from Utah said, you know what, I really would too, Mr. Chairman. And then one after another, people said, you know, Mr. Chairman, I think Louie's right. I really feel better. And then when we got about 10 people that said that, then the chairman said, well, all right, but we're not going to have them on anything but 206 and 215. And my friend Dan Lundgren from California said, Mr. Chairman, and he hadn't said anything for 25 minutes to that point. He says, I've got that amendment right here, sunsets on 206 and 215. I said, fine, I don't care whose name's on it, but there's got to be sunsets. So we agreed on that. And we went in and we had the hearing, and we had sunsets on the bill. And we did clean up some of the language before it was renewed to make it tighter, because I was uncomfortable about some of the language. And we were assured over and over, and the language said, you know, it's got to be a link with foreign. The foreign has to be part of it. And so that was the assurance. And with that, I did vote to extend it in committee, and I voted to extend it on the floor. So why am I upset now? There was no authorization to gather every log of every phone call in America. We were told repeatedly that the language was clear, nobody could misinterpret it. It had to have a link to a foreign organization, terrorist organization, or a terrorist individual, or you could not get any information. That's part of it, and it was never, ever anticipated. And Sensenbrenner has said this, and he and I have locked horns on a number of issues, but he has said, look, I wrote the original Patriot Act. And this is not what we agreed to. Now, you have other people on the intelligence committees and Homeland Security committees say, oh no, this is perfectly fine. And I'm telling you, that was never part of the debate because that's not part of the language. There had to be that foreign tie. And you can go back to the original debate. I'm prone to sarcasm, and I made a very sarcastic remark on the floor of the House where I said, look, I know a lot of my friends over here across the aisle are concerned about the federal government getting your phone records. And under the law, it's very, very clear that you have to have made contact with a foreign terrorist or a foreign terrorist organization. So if you're concerned, all you have to do is next time you call one of your foreign terrorist friends, use somebody else's phone. Now, I thought that was cute and clever, but the point was there had to be that tie. And I don't care what anybody on intelligence says, that's what we debated, that's what we passed, and there had to be that tie so that only if somebody made contact with a foreign terrorist were they going to be able to come in and get your phone logs. It is dangerous what's happened. That's why I'm so upset. And yes, I voted for the Patriot Act, and because they have so badly abused it, now they say, well, it was getting abused before we took office, fine. Then if we can't trust you to follow the law and establish probable cause that there is a foreign terrorist tie, then you shouldn't have that power. And I'm ready to repeal it because they have so badly abused what we passed. So you want to know why I'm upset? This is not what we passed. We never agreed for them to have this kind of power. And, you know, a lot of things, sometimes I'm slow, but boy, sometimes it comes. In 2002, when I was a Chief Justice, I was at a seminar, and there was a lawyer for the CIA, graduated from Yale, participating, and she made the statement in 2002, well, banks have your financial records, so why shouldn't the government? And it's exactly what people are saying now. Well, if a third party has your record, you have no expectation of privacy. Well, we got to revisit that expectation of privacy because you should have an expectation of privacy. I don't know if y'all seen, but one of the things when they had the House, the Senate, and the White House, they passed the Consumer Financial Protection Act, which created a Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And then we found out just in the last few weeks, they have been gathering everybody's financial records saying, well, how can we go after these rogue credit card companies unless we know what everybody is doing and who's been treated unfairly? That's got to stop. So I flash back to 2002. I flashed back to 2002 and I'm wondering, were they getting those records already in 2002? Because she seemed just, how could I be so stupid as to say, if a bank has them, then certainly the government. And the way I responded to her at our little debate was, she said, why shouldn't the government? I said, because the banks don't have the authority to knock down your front door, come into your home, throw you to the ground, put a boot in your back, put handcuffs on, and drag you out to jail. And the government can, and that's why they have no business having everybody's financial records or phone logs. So we have got to... I think it may be informative for those of you that wondered about my position on this. I was shocked that we didn't have, that Justin Amash's amendment did not pass. Because there were guys on our side that were upset, but they were, you know, strong-armed and told, hey, you do need to vote against the Amash amendment. And there are those on intelligence and Homeland Security that have been told, this is too important, you can't let them take this away. We can't stop terrorist attacks unless we've got this kind of power. And there are people that I have a lot of respect for because they've never lied to me, that are extremely liberal on the Democratic side, and I approached two different ones of them, saying, I couldn't believe you voted against Amash's amendment. And this person said, well, the administration really turned up the heat on us, so I said, all right, well, I'll vote against this, but we got to get this fixed. And I went up to another and I said, I was shocked you voted against the Amash amendment because I know we talked about your feelings about this. I thought we could work together on this issue. And he said, Louie, let me show you. Yeah, there was a lot of pressure from the administration, don't take this tool away. And he pulled out a printout of what he had been sent. And it says, you have to vote against the Amash amendment. And there in black and white, it said, the law is very clear under the Patriot Act. We do not have authority to get anyone's phone records unless they have contact with a foreign terrorist. And they said the law is very clear. And I told him, the law is very clear on that. But they have been doing it, so all Amash's amendment says is, we're not going to give you the money to do what's against the law to keep doing. And he said, well, it says real clear here. And it's very clever, though. They didn't say we weren't doing it. It just says the law doesn't allow us to do this. So you don't have to vote for the Amash amendment. Pretty clever. And he's very liberal, but he's an honest guy. And that's why he voted against it. I think if it comes up again, it will pass. So I've told you the background. I can get you the language if you want that. But if neither administration can be trusted to follow the law, then, you know, I'm ready to pull the power just such as it was supposed to be that they violated. And just so you understand, that this, to me, this isn't a political issue. In July of 2007, we got word that the Justice Department had badly violated their powers under the Patriot Act, and maybe even 3,000 times where they had just gone on fishing expeditions. I was outraged then. And this was, and so Attorney General Gonzalez, brilliant guy, nice guy, he had come before our committee and the Senate and said, you know, there are no known abuses of this provision of the Patriot Act. Well, I was telling Schumer, I ran into him one day, I said, hey, I was watching a replay, it came on like 1 or 2 a.m., and I'm up going through stuff that I didn't get a chance to review during the day, and I said, I saw you had our Attorney General before you, and he said, that line, and then he got very descriptive, and I said, no, you didn't listen to him, because he had been before them before and said there are no known abuses, and then they found out he had the IG report on his desk that said there were probably 3,000 abuses, just fishing expedition. And so when Schumer asked him about it, he said, look, yes, it's true, the report was on my desk, but I never looked at it for that time. And so when Schumer said, you know, I couldn't believe that line, and I said, Senator, you weren't listening. He explained he wasn't lying. He was just incompetent. He didn't bother to read something. He said, lying, incompetent, I don't care. I can't believe Bush doesn't get rid of him. And I said, now I can answer that one for you. Bush can't afford to let him go because you will never agree to a new Attorney General in the next year and a half. And we can't go a year and a half without an Attorney General, not now. And he said, well, we could agree on somebody. And I said, well, I'm not sure about that, but if you could, you ought to talk to him and work it out. And he said, and he mentioned a few names, and I think we could agree on them. And so I left that meeting, that chance meeting, and I called over to the White House, to the Chief of Staff, And Josh Bolton was the chief of staff, a great guy. And he was in a meeting with President Bush, and I asked him to call me back, and he did very promptly. And I told him about my conversation, and I said, look, we can't continue to defend this. This is wrong. And we got to, you know, it's like a football team. If you're losing, no matter how nice a guy you are, it's time for a new coach. And I said, I think that you ought to reach out to Schumer and work out an agreement on somebody and get a new attorney general, because it's going to be tough for this attorney general to have any cooperation on anything in view of this finding. And I said, but now understand this. You dare accept a resignation until you have a firm agreement with Schumer on either a list that he will vote for or a specific individual. So then we're at August break. I'm back here in East Texas going around, and one day I say, oh, Attorney General has just announced he's resigning. I hope he got that agreement from Schumer. Then the first week of September, they announced that that he was appointing former Judge Mukasey. And I ran into Schumer right after. I said, hey, was Mukasey on your list of acceptable? He said, sure was. He'll do a good job. Now, I've been very upset with Senator Schumer lately. But if you go back and look at that, Mukasey said in his hearing before Schumer that he didn't think waterboarding was torture. Every other Democrat voted against Mukasey for that reason, and Schumer broke the tie and voted for him. So he is not a nice guy when it comes to strategy of destroying the Republican Party, but he kept his word on that occasion. And we had a very good attorney general for a year and a half, and Mukasey is still, he's become a good friend of mine, and I can call him and visit. But that's a lot of background, but it tells you where I am, where my heart is. I don't care about party as much as I do people doing the right thing.
Okay. Now this is the lightning round part.
Okay.
Louie.
All right, be fast.
We're supposed to be done by 8:30, so you got a lot of questions.
Right, I'll go fast.
Sit down. Okay.
Well, those are big deals.
This is Benghazi. Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to kind of consolidate this.
Okay.
There are questions about why don't we have a select committee on Benghazi, and is it true that Congressman Sessions is chairman of that committee and is holding up H.R. 36? If so, why do you think that bill is being blocked? And is it, does the speaker have something to do with that being blocked? This individual says the truth needs to be exposed, as do the liars that are hiding the facts. And do you feel the people will ever find out what really happened in Benghazi?
Yeah. I do think we'll find out eventually what happened at Benghazi, but we're going to have to be a lot more forceful than we have been. And when it comes to the IRS, I don't know if you're aware, but there are a couple of specific laws that have been broken. It certainly appears from all the evidence we've heard that are criminal laws regarding the IRS. They have specific provisions about not discriminating or selectively acting against people. So for the IRS, I think we should have a special prosecutor with the power to prosecute people in court, because that's the only way you're going to be able to get people in and say you're either going to work with us or we come after you because clearly you violated criminal law. And that's how you work up the food chain when you do that. You get to the highest level you can, where people will tell you what happened and who made them do what. So we need, for the IRS, we need a special prosecutor. But on Benghazi, I've been consistent. We need a select committee on that. We should. Whoever asked the questions, you're exactly right. Because there may not be laws that were violated other than moral law of sending people into a situation and never being willing to help them till people have been killed and you left them out there hanging 20 hours after it starts. we're told we couldn't get a plane quicker there. You know, that I've flown from Andrews Air Force Base on a military plane to Jordan, and it was like less than 10 hours, and we can't get a plane to them in less than 20. So we need a select committee. There may not have been criminal laws violated, but there are a lot of things that need to come out. And you may have heard me say, and I'll keep saying it, in answer to Hillary Clinton's question, what difference does it make at this point? At this point, at every point, it makes a difference, because we can prevent people from being similarly killed in the future. And if we get to the bottom of Benghazi, then next time there's a threat, we don't have to turn tail and run like a bunch of cowards. We can actually stand our ground, increase security where it's needed, and prevent that kind of thing from happening. It is an act of war against our country to attack an embassy. And because I was in the Army in '79 at Fort Benning, and we went on alert, and everybody was wondering who's going. And nobody was anxious to go, but we knew somebody had to go because they committed an act of war, attacked our embassy. We did nothing, and we're still paying for it. I love Ronald Reagan, but in '83, when they blew up, when they had the bombing and he withdrew our Marines, well, Congress didn't give him a choice, but it still looked like, you know, we were cowards. And then the same thing over and over. So we've got to get to the bottom of Benghazi. And you know, these people that were involved in killing our Americans, you know, they have seen, look, the FBI is incompetent, took them. They are not incompetent, they just weren't allowed to go do their job. But we've got to get to the bottom of it. I think we will get to the bottom of it. As far as why Republicans have not pushed, we have Republican leaders and perhaps people on at least head of intel. Some people know stuff the rest of us don't, and they don't want it coming out. And I've asked this question because I saw a transcript of an interview of our speaker with Laura Ingraham, and I didn't see it till like April, something like that. And in that interview, she asked Speaker Boehner, Rand Paul has been raising an allegation that their arms were being run from Libya, perhaps to Turkey and to Syria. Can you tell us about that? And his statement is pretty close verbatim, not perfectly, but were, well, I'm familiar with the fact about that happening, but my information comes from classified sources, so I can't really talk about it. And so the fact of that happening? And so I asked the question, you know, were you aware of guns being run out of Libya to Turkey, to Syria, before 9/11 last fall? And I was, because if so, I can understand why you wouldn't want a select committee to get into all of that. It might be embarrassing. And the answer was, I think that the two things are completely independent, and we can still do a good investigation on Benghazi. And I said, that's not my question. My question is, were you aware of guns being run out of Libya into Turkey or Syria or anywhere before 9/11 last fall? The answer was, I've told you, I think we can do an adequate investigation of Benghazi without worrying about it. They're two independent things. And I said, that sounds like a non-denial denial back from Watergate days. And anyway, that's all the answer I got. So I've given you what I know. But from my experience of sitting on the bench and listening to people dodge questions, it sure sounds like to me somebody knew some stuff was going on in there that they didn't want to come out in a separate hearing. And I don't care. I really don't care what party it hurts. I want to get to the truth. The widow of Ty Woods has become a friend, and I'm hoping that she'll be willing to come forward and talk about it. But I am friends and have been with, names come out now, David Ubben, didn't come from me. But I met him. I go out to Walter Reed, and I sat down at his table and said, hey, wow, it looks like a serious injury. How'd you get hurt? You know, I go see people, Walter Reed. He said, well, I was wounded at Benghazi. Wow. And so anyway, that's how we became friends. His wife was with him, and Grinnell is just a sweetheart, and he is a fellow Christian. He got a wonderful little girl, about 4 now, a boy about 1. And he asked that I not go public, and I talked with him about what he knew. And his information is so confined with trying to stay alive and keep other people alive. He went on the roof with Ty Woods and with Glenn Doherty, and you know, they knew from the very moment the very first attack happened, it was an attack. It was a planned, coordinated, well-trained group coming in. And those of you that have been in the military, you know, they teach you with mortars or with artillery, you fire 3 rounds, and no matter how far those 3 are from your target, you make a quick calculation, and the 4th round every time ought to be dead on your target. And of course, in the infantry, they teach you if somebody hits around you with 3 rounds, you better move, because it's going to be on top of you next. And you know that. So when David said we were up on the roof and we had 3 rounds, mortar rounds come in, I said, oh, they bracketed you. He said, oh, no. They missed with the first one, but it was very clear from the first mortar. They knew exactly where they were firing. And then the second and third ones that killed Glenn and Ty and took most of his right leg, and they've been reconstructing it. And he's still at Walter Reed. Catherine Herridge had talked to somebody else and found out about him from another source. So she contacted me and said, will you talk about David? And I emailed David and I said, they want to talk. She's got a bunch of information from some source. She said she talked to you. She said, well, she just spoke, but said, so do you want me to continue not to comment on you? And he said, well, it's all right, just use your own judgment. So I've been willing to say the guy's a hero. He went up on the rooftop and was giving cover to all of the other people that were there. But we need to know why there were dozens of CIA agents there. Now, you may have missed this because Glenn Hicks didn't say it as explicitly in the hearing as he had outside the hearing. And in fact, Dorothy Woods called and asked if I would. She said that she would like to go to that hearing. She'd like to be public to that extent, if I could arrange it. And so I immediately texted Daryl Issa, and Daryl said, you tell me how many seats you need, you'll have them around the front row. So she and her sister came, and I rearranged things so I could sit with them. But during the hearing that Oversight had, one of the staff members for Oversight pulled me aside, and I went back there. Nobody's asking specifically enough why we even had a consulate at Benghazi. So I go back and I gather with 3 of our guys on the committee, and so somebody's got to ask, because the answer is that Hillary Clinton wanted to do a farewell tour before she left the State Department, and she wanted to stand in Benghazi and say, when the British left, we stayed firm. We believe in standing by our allies, and it would be a big, gutsy move and a great crescendo for her farewell tour as Secretary of State. Well, he indicated when they asked, well, you know, she wanted us to have a presence, thought it was important. He never said fully what he had behind the scenes, but we know that was one of the issues why we had a consulate there. It was going to be good for maybe running for president next time. So anyway.
Okay. Obamacare, defunding Obamacare. First of all, do you believe that we can actually defund Obamacare? Included in this is a question about Why can't the defunding of Obamacare be separated from the rest of the continuing resolution so that Republicans don't get in a corner? Do you believe that can be done? And do you believe that the Republicans have a strategy to replace Obamacare if they defund it?
Okay. The middle question about could we do it separately? Yeah, we've done it separately. Over and over and over. We have voted to defund Obamacare. We have done it over and over, but it does no good until you have leverage to force the Senate to pass the same bill. That's why it's got to be linked up, because you got no leverage. And so, look, and really, I've been on strategy meetings where we talked about, and this isn't the Republican conference, this is individuals, where you got two competing views. One view is Obamacare is so bad, if we refuse to keep putting Band-Aids on or extending deadlines, just make it come in exactly like it was passed, people will be so upset, they will demand that it be thrown out, pulled out by its roots and thrown away. But there's also, if you do that strategy, a chance that it won't, that once you start in socialized medicine, and talked to Mark Levin about it. It took the Soviet Union 70 years. Rush brought this out on his show. It's about 70 years or so to get rid of the socialism. It doesn't always just fall of its own weight immediately. So that's a risk. On the other side, do I believe we can get it defunded? It all depends on the American people. Because if we pass a bill, a resolution that has everything funded, even some things I'm not happy about, but would vote for just if we could get rid of Obamacare, and the American people rise up and say, Senators, we are going to throw every one of you out that stands in the way. You're causing our doctors to give up their practice. Hospitals are closing their doors. We don't have the insurance. Insurance companies are no longer writing this insurance. Ours has gone up dramatically. You promised it'd go down. All of these promises being broken. If the American people rise up sufficiently, yes, we can get it defunded. But all we can do is at least give the vehicle to give it a chance. But I can promise you, if we don't take that stand, it will not get defunded, and it won't, nothing will happen. So it's a matter of taking that stand. And let me tell you why we can't. The big reason we can't, one is some say politics are bad, but others, and this is what I've been told repeatedly, we cannot defund mandatory spending in an appropriations bill. Why not? Because it's the rules of the House. Well, who makes the rules of the House? Well, we do. But it's not just the rules of the House, it's law. You cannot defund anything in an appropriations bill. Well, who makes the law? Well, we made that law. But anyway, that's the kind of stuff we've been getting. And I had a wonderful friend really chastising me last week. You know the Constitution, you're a smart guy, and I heard you out there saying that we could have a chance to defund Obamacare. You know good and well we can't. It's the rule. You can't defund a mandatory program in an appropriations bill. And I said, and we can change the rule. He said, oh, well, what? We're not going to change the rule. So what happens when you bring that bill to the floor and it defunds mandatory spending of Obamacare in the appropriations bill? And one of the Democrats stand up and said, point of order. This violates our rule against defunding mandatory spending or legislating in an appropriations bill. I said, then I will jump up and say, I move to table the point of order. And if we have a majority that vote to table it, then this goes through the House without another problem. Well, yeah, well, I guess we could do it, but it's still against the rules now. We make the rules. So why are we so hell-bent on saying we can't do that because it violates a rule we made ourselves? Change the rule. We can do that. So it can be done. But I promise you it won't be done if we don't try. And so on the one hand, if Obamacare goes fully implemented, there are people that are going to suffer as a result. And it's already happening. I mean, Kathleen Sebelius was ready to let that little girl die. And the board will do the same thing. And can't say you weren't warned. President Obama said before it passed in his town hall at the White House, and the lady said, well, you know, my mother got a pacemaker and she's lived 10 more years. Will you at least consider quality of life? And he beat around the bush. You can find the video. And eventually he says, maybe we're better off just telling your mom to take a pain pill. I mean, yes. And so that's what Obamacare will do. And that board, call it death panel, call it whatever you want, but they will make decisions on who gets a hip, who gets a knee, who gets a pacemaker, who has what surgery, who gets the treatment they need for radiation. And as I said nationally, after Bette Midler tweeted on July 4th, gee, if the founders had lost the revolution, we'd all have universal health care. And my response to that was, well, we know in England they have a 19 to 20% higher mortality rate for people with women with breast cancer. So if we had that universal health care here, which 1 out of 5 women do you want to die? Because that's what it would mean if we had that health care. I don't want to go there. So I understand the strategy, just let it go, let it come in, but I don't know if that happens if we do get it repealed for many years to come and a lot of people die unnecessarily. I just know we have a chance to stop it, one last chance. And as people start suffering, if we don't try, I don't want to say, you know, well, maybe we should have tried back then. You know, in the years ahead, I'm back home and people are dying early because they're not getting the treatment they need, because that's where socialized medicine goes. Say, well, maybe we should have tried. I don't want to leave that out there. I want to do everything we can. I don't think we can put it off.
Okay, there are several questions here about exempting members of Congress and their staff from Obamacare. And then the second part of that is, have they been exempted? Did you vote to exclude Congress and your staff? And are we subsidizing Obamacare for Congress? Is that included?
Yeah, that's all part of the same question. Yeah, I tell you, this administration, somebody's smart in there. You may remember the last appropriations bill. We refused to vote ourselves in Congress a raise because there were enough of us that you better not. They said, well, it's automatic. American public not going to buy that. We make the rules. We made it automatic. We can stop it from being automatic, and we better not give ourselves a raise. So we were able to do that. And then the president signs an executive order that gave everybody in the federal government, which includes Congress, a raise. And we got some really furious calls from people. How dare you give yourself a raise? Well, wasn't that clever of the president? He signs the law, and people blame us thinking we gave ourselves a raise. So we rushed in and we passed a bill that said Congress doesn't get a raise. So, but very, very clever. Well, it worked so well on that. And as I understand it, there were unfortunately members of Republican and Democratic leadership conferencing on this before the Office of Personnel Management made their decision. But they made the decision that, and so this is the ruling, it was not anything we voted on in Congress, because under Obamacare, members of Congress, come January 1st, we go to the exchanges. And the congressional health care, believe it or not, it is exactly the same health care program every federal employee across the country has. It's nothing different. That changed some years ago. So we have the same thing every federal employee had. But it meant every federal employee was going to get kicked over, and that included Congress. Well, if we're going to do it to the rest of the country, it's only fair it be done to us. But there was an exception, and it was very clever the way it was done. It said all of those paid under this fund, which is the fund that pays Congress and all our staffs, they're thrown under the exchange. Well, what I didn't realize when I first read that was, well, the House and Senate leadership, they're not paid from that fund, they're paid from a different fund because they're in leadership, and so are the staffs of their committees. So the leadership is exempted and their staff. So we passed an amendment this year that will require the speaker and the minority leader, their staffs, to push them under Obamacare. We passed that in the House. Senate doesn't want to pass that. But we're trying to make it so, hey, if you're going to force this on everybody else, we're going to have to live with it too. And there actually have been a bunch of people that have been working in Congress as staffers for 20 years who have decided they're going to retire, because if they retire before January 1st, they can keep their insurance policy. And I hate to tell them, they won't keep it long, because these people in charge this time, they're going to rip it out of their hands. You can retire if you want to. That's fine. I don't have a problem. But don't do it thinking you're going to keep your insurance very long, because the president lied about that one. You're not keeping your insurance. So anyway, we're under it. We never cast any vote to exempt members of Congress. The Office of Personnel Management, OPM, they just did that with a stroke of the pen. But unfortunately, I'm told that our leaders had met with them before that happened. And as I was talking to Mark Levin last week, you know, self-interest is a real healthy thing when you're trying to get people to be on your side. And we had more and more members of Congress that were thinking, you know, if we defund Obamacare, maybe I don't have to lose my insurance in January. And frankly, there are members of Congress, you know, they've got families and they've got children that are, some have children that require a lot of care. And so they're thinking, wow, we defunded. So we were getting a little encouragement. Gee, those of us that were fighting this battle, and I can tell you, there's been a group of us. Normally we meet once a week, one morning a week. And every now and then there's a week we hadn't been meeting, but we've been doing that for a few months. And it's a really great group. You may recognize some of the names: Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Ron Johnson, Ted Cruz. We got other people in the House, a bunch of hardheads like me and Justin Amash. And so we got a nice little healthy group, a couple of dozen of us. And so this has been our plan, to try to defund it and to work toward this. So I can't really say objectively, because I've been part of the plan, that this is where we're going to go, as Mike Lee's letter that he's done. So anyway, I think it's got a shot. I just know we've got to try, because this is a bad.
For the unions and IRS.
Oh yeah, that's another, the exemption. Yeah, right. And I don't want to encourage everybody to yell out questions, but the truth is there are people that this administration has exempted, and they will continue to exempt their buddies. And it's one of the it's what you find in a socialist country, that those in leadership always exempt themselves. When I was an exchange student in the Soviet Union in the summer of '73, I was amazed. But it was in Russian, the word is blot, that you have political pull, so you get to skate around the laws and people look the other way for you. And so we've developed the blot system here in the United States, where if you're part of the Democratic leadership, you're pretty much going to get whatever you want. And if hadn't it been ironic though, that yeah, the unions got some exemptions, but not totally exempt. They got extensions on things they had to do and comply with, but ultimately they're still going to be under Obamacare. And we were shocked that union leaders would allow Obamacare to pass and support it, because we knew what was going to happen to the union workers, and they were not going to be happy. And now that union workers are finding out, wait a minute, we had good health care. And in fact, frankly, most of the union health care policies were better than Congress's. And they're all now realizing we're losing them, and they're furious at their leaders. So what do their leaders say? Hey, you can't do Obamacare. We got to get rid of this. This isn't fair to our workers. Well, where were you on that a few years ago? You pushed that through. You helped the guy push that through. And now you act like, oh, we didn't know this. Well, you should have known. We did. Some of us read it. So anyway, I still think we got a chance, but if we don't try it, it's sure not going to happen.
Okay, this is a question on ethanol. While we wait for someone in the environmental lobby to learn something about science or the environment, could someone, perhaps you, stand before Congress and say, holy moly, we made a mistake with this ethanol business, in that it ruins engines, costs more to make than it provides in energy, and has played havoc with worldwide food supply, including ours? Could the Republicans pass a bill rescinding all legislation and regulation pertaining to ethanol? It belongs in a mason jar, not in my gas tank.
And I agree, and some of us have been pushing that, but this is what, you talk about politics, this is what get counted. Now, I've been invited to speak in Iowa a few times this year, Tea Party groups and stuff, but they like the ethanol requirement in Iowa. And if you're going to run for president and you want to win Iowa right out of the gate, then you better be for ethanol requirement. But it's just wrong. It's just wrong. And especially we go to 10 to 15%. It's going to destroy a lot of engines. And a lot of us keep talking about it. And I know you can't possibly keep up with everything we're talking about in Washington, but some of these issues, until you get leadership on board, and they say, well, our national party leaders say we can't pull that back because then they'll never vote for another Republican in Iowa, and we need Iowa, and our presidential candidates need it. But, and I've got friends that are strongly in support of ethanol requirements. But I've had a bunch of people ask, why is the cost of gasoline going up right now? We've got more being produced than ever. And yeah, I wondered that. I mean, it shouldn't be over $3 a gallon right now. But I'm told the bottom line is the one thing that's a component of the gasoline prices that keeps going up and up and up is the ethanol. And so I'm still hopeful. We've got to repeal that requirement, and certainly at least not go to 15%. And especially now that we know we could be energy independent on nothing but natural gas. We don't, you know. So I'm hoping we're of one accord on that. We just don't have a lot of leadership pushing to do away with it. We really need to.
Okay, we've gotten several questions about why in the world doesn't somebody in Congress, an independent group, somebody, either file articles of impeachment against President Obama for his unconstitutional acts, or file a lawsuit and run it through the federal court system. Anyway, there are several questions on that, Congressman.
Yeah, and clearly the president has exceeded his power repeatedly. And when this discussion comes up, it doesn't last very long because people immediately said, we had a president that was caught red-handed committing perjury, and you couldn't get much of anybody in the Senate to go along. And so why even put our nation through that right now? Let's just try to defeat what he's doing. And you surely know, everybody in here knows, the Senate will never vote to remove him from office. They're just not going to do it. So anyway, we have a president that continues to usurp power, And so impeaching, all that means is the House votes to impeach him.
That's right.
He's not removed from office until the Senate does that.
Put it on, be on record. Go on record.
Go on
That's what we're
record.
asking you to do.
If we have an impeachment proceeding, all of these things we're trying to fight, the immigration bill, the defunding Obamacare, the spying on American people, the impeachment becomes the major distraction, and all of these things go unimpeded. And I just don't want to give up the fight. And I don't want to be too conspiratorial here, but there are times that I think it just feels like this administration is creating things, hoping we'll go off and do that, because they know when Obamacare fully kicks in, we are a socialized nation. It's just a matter of how long till it's fully done. And the same on immigration. If they can keep us distracted long enough, they'll push some just small bills, a little DREAM Act, and then it's still going to allow the same thing to happen. And that would take every bit of energy the House has to take up an impeachment. And in the meantime, all of these other things that make us a socialist nation. I mean, Pelosi knew there was a risk, and she talked about it. There was a risk they would lose the majority by passing Obamacare. They knew that was a risk. And what they said privately was, if we can do this, because the way it transforms America, it will be worth it, because in the long run, we win, we take over everything. And so it's just one of those things. You got to choose your fights. And I've had a number of you tell me, you know, I'm praying for you. And every now and then somebody will say, I'm praying you have the courage. Well, that's not what I need prayers for. And I desperately need prayers, but they're prayers for wisdom. Since I'm not afraid of anybody or anything, not afraid of dying, I know where I go. I'm not afraid of anybody, but a respectful fear of the Lord. Sometimes that gets used to my detriment, because everybody runs to me, you're a fighter, you need to take up this fight and this fight. And sometimes I take up fights that are a distraction. And if you pray for me, I ask for wisdom and discernment. I got to know what to fight over, what to let go, what are the most important fights we can't afford to lose, and what are distractions. And we've been talking all this evening about very, very important issues. But at times it's a priority. Which are you going to spend all your energy right now to do? And I think in September it ought to be trying to defund Obamacare first and foremost. So I tell you, I was talking to a friend, Paul Brown from Georgia, this afternoon, coming back from Longview, and we're trying to get a big group to come to Washington on September 10th. It is the first day we're back in session. We don't have many days in session in September before the September 30th deadline, when everything stops unless we have funded the government. So we're going to have to strategize quickly, and if we have any hope, it's got to be quick. So that's why we're starting as of tomorrow to ask people to come, if you can possibly, on September 10th. It's on the west side, the mall side of the Capitol, to try to, and then not only just have the big rally, but then go by the offices, the Senate offices, the House offices, the Speaker's offices, and let people know. You may think it's a nice idea to let people see how bad Obamacare is when it kicks in, but people are going to suffer unnecessarily. Let's defund it now. Yes, it may be against your rules, so change your stupid rules so you can do it and get it done. So I'm hoping if anybody can, you can be a big help to us then.
That's going to be all the questions that we have time for. I've got a stack here that we're going to hand to Jonna.
Okay.
And then if you all would go through them, most of the immigration type questions you already answered in your opening. And we have a couple on DOMA, and we have some trade questions, and then just some miscellaneous ones. So if you would write a response to those, then we'll post those on our website.
Okay. And thank you. And can I mention one other issue that it didn't come up, and I know it may not be a big issue to a lot of folks, but from a world perspective, it's huge, and that's what's happening in Egypt. Yes. Now, this administration, from the beginning, has been supportive of the Muslim Brotherhood. People say, why do you think they keep supporting the Muslim Brotherhood? Well, I've been vilified over and over for saying this, but it is true, and I won't back down because I know it's true. They have Muslim brother advisors in this administration advising them what to do. So, of course, they're going to be fine with the Muslim Brotherhood candidate taking over in Egypt, even when he starts subverting their constitution and taking dictatorial powers and dismissing people as he sees fit, right and left, and he should have been thrown out. Now, there are many who say he was never properly elected. It was fraught with fraud. Supposedly got 13 million votes. But I had written Egypt off, folks. And, you know, gee, it's lost. And I've been vilified for pointing out what somebody studying history can see. And I've talked to John Bolton. He and I agree. I mean, you look at the map of the area around the Mediterranean. If you know your history about the Ottoman Empire, at one time they had most of the way around, and we could get on to the history quite a bit. It's amazing history. But, and I've been vilified for saying this administration has jump-started a new Ottoman Empire. They have helped jump-start a new Ottoman Empire because they have. When they helped put Egypt into radical hands, and then Gaddafi had blood on his hands from the 80s and 90s, but in 2003 when we invaded Iraq, he all of a sudden had a conversion experience, says, you can see anything I've got, I won't pursue nukes. He was giving us more information than anybody than Israel about terrorist activities. He was an ally during this time against terrorism, because he knew the radicals wanted him out too. And then not only did we encourage it, we bombed him. They couldn't have done it without us. And we knew at the time, hey, Mr. President, there are Al-Qaeda-backed rebels. We don't know how extensive, but please don't do this. And he didn't care what Congress thought. He made that clear because the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Council, 57 states there, well, either they've got 50 or we got 57 or we got 57. Anyway, one of those numbers. But anyway, I get real confused on 57 and 50. But anyway, they have 57 states, including they count the Palestinian so-called state. But they wanted us in, and we had some NATO allies that they get their oil from there, so they wanted us in. And we went in, and it was a huge mistake. So you look at the damage that's been done, and you see, okay, now if Syria falls, well, I'm not an Assad fan. The guy's a cutthroat villain. But how do we win? I mean, Assad's bad. The Al-Qaeda-backed rebels are bad. Why are we in the middle, getting in the middle of that? There's no win for us there. Somebody suggested just supply guns to both sides and let them go. But still, there's not a good solution there. So why would we get in the middle of that? And then you look at the pressure being applied in Jordan. And of course, we know Iran's fallen. And now because Bush is such a nice guy, he negotiates, he has an agreement with Iraq that we would leave some troops behind there in a safe place and help keep the peace. And Obama agreed to that. And then there was no status of forces agreement, no troops were there, and Iran was putting tremendous pressure on Iraq. They were putting tremendous pressure on Americans because they were putting IEDs. They were funding so much of the killing of Americans in Iraq. And so you've got Iran, and now Maliki, he knew we were pulling out. So he's kind of under the thumb of Iran. He's sensitive to their demands because he knows they could come after him. So you've got all of this violent, extremist, radical Islamists. And Egypt then falls under Muslim Brotherhood. You know, I was just, gosh, it's all developing. And then 20 million Egyptians went to the streets. Yes. And then 30 million Egyptians went to the street. Yes. And I talked to, and actually she took a sabbatical for a month or so with, she worked for Michelle Bachmann. And she went to Egypt. And she is a courageous young lady. And I would never have wanted one of my daughters to go over there the same age. But she did. And she came back with pictures, and she says it's incredible to be there when the millions were coming out around the country, and moderate Muslims were coming up to the Coptic Christian Pope there in Egypt and apologizing for the persecution for the radicals and begging his forgiveness because they want to live in peace together. They don't want the radicals. They want to work together. And she said it was incredible. Moderate Muslims holding hands with the Coptic Christian Pope, walking along, demonstrating. And then I put up, and I had to be careful not to violate the rules of the house, but I just felt it in my heart. I got to get this out there. And so I did an hour-long speech on the House floor a couple of weeks ago, the last day of the week. And I had the posters blown up of her pictures. I love the one that says on the right side, it's American flag with a green check mark. Yeah, we're for the United States. And then on the left side is a picture of our president with a big X through it. We don't like your president. And they, you know, and that, you might not know the symbol of the Muslim Brotherhood in Arabic, but they had a green circle with CNN and the Muslim Brotherhood symbol. They said they're one, they're working together. And CNN has promoted that. But this is a big deal for them to have arisen. And the one thing I felt bad about after that long talk on laying all this out on the floor and having all the pictures and how our hearts and our support should be for the Egyptian people. Now, this is a true democratic movement, and they don't want the radicals. But I failed, and I felt so bad because I knew it was coming. And that is because they had the vision of an Islamic caliphate that goes beyond even the Ottoman Empire. They can't afford to let Egypt go back and be controlled by any type of democratic process. And so they are going to fight, they're going to kill, they're going to do whatever it takes to get that country back. And I thought, gosh, I should have warned people. So I felt badly. And this is what I want to close with. It was my email, because I felt bad after the speech. God, I should have warned them. And so I emailed young lady and I said, thanks for all of your help. I hope, and I was up all that Thursday night working on getting my facts together and stuff. Said, I hope after all your work you're not too disappointed. I also hope I didn't let good people down in the United States and Egypt, but there were numerous other things I meant to say and didn't, like how critical Egypt is to the radical Islamists, how terrorists will be willing to die violently in suicide killings to put Egypt back under radical control. So Egypt is in for some difficult days, and the U.S. needs to be supportive of the masses of Egyptians that have made themselves heard as the radicals try to take back the country. And then she responded back, Congressman Gohmert, oh my goodness, I just got up from my knees thanking God for you and what you just did. I haven't been able to stop thanking him. This is probably the happiest I've been in a long time. Thank you. I cannot tell you how much this means to the people of Egypt, Libya, Afghanistan, Tunisia, and to the world. You delivered a game-changing message today that I believe and pray will be a message that shifts the atmosphere in the war on terror and brings hope to these nations, starting with America. While you were giving your speech, I was receiving text messages that your speech was historic, that it needs to be disseminated nationwide in Egypt. They also said you are the best in Congress. You're incredible. I'm starting the campaign for going for president for 2016. You have my vote, sir. But thank you from the bottom of my heart, and may the Lord bless you 100-fold for what you just did. You have no idea the hope and encouragement you just gave to people around the world. God bless you. And anyway, so it was a start. So before I leave, the president of the Chamber of Commerce from Egypt, who happens to be a Coptic Christian, he came to my office and said, I know you're about to leave to fly back home, but I just need to tell you, I'm urged by people all over Egypt to come and tell you before I come back to Egypt how much you meant, and your transcript of what you said has gone viral all over Egypt. Everybody is spreading it. Look, America does understand. They're not all crazy like their president. They understand. This guy has spelled it out. They know. They get it. See, he's talking about it on the House floor, and it is spreading encouragement everywhere. And I'm just telling you, I don't know the outcome. I don't know if we can be successful in defunding Obamacare, but I know we've got a chance and we've got a platform and we've got to give it all we got. Thank y'all very much.